All right. I think we're here. Had some issues earlier where we just did not totally come on correctly here and had some other various issues to deal with. And so we're back. And of course, my hair is like totally out of whack here. This is definitely a afterthought of the of the COVID, and not having the have a place to get your hair done. Another thing is that we have ways of dealing with that here. I do have a spouse. Okay. I'm just making a lame excuse. But, they are starting to very slowly bring things back here on Delmarva. What was it? The Delaware, starting tomorrow, is opening up some retail businesses. They're going to have to do the curbside thing, but they'll be able to open up tomorrow. Also here on the Maryland side, the governor is now allowing us to go fishing, which, if you live by a river, that's always a good thing. So you can go now we can, without guilt, go down to the wharf and go down to Riverton Wharf and drown some worms or some bread. Or there's people out there that actually use cat food as bait. They actually use it as an attractant, and it works. If you ever have a chance to see his videos, look for catch 'em all fishing on YouTube. Definitely one of them that even I enjoy. Yeah, we missed you last week. We almost missed you this week. A lot has been going on here, and I'm hoping everybody does eventually come to this video and joins us here, because this is the place to be on a quarantined afternoon here on the Delmarva Peninsula. So you can now come here and join the quarantine with us here. Oh, okay, that's cool. That thing is working. Playing with a new little little thing on the where is it here? The Stream Deck. This is what we use for our video switching here. This is the Elgato Stream Deck, and as you can see, there's all the different buttons on there. These are all the different controls for the various things that we do, and this is how we switch. Like, for example, when you see the slates and that stuff like that come up, that's how they come up, is with this box. And I put a little gizmo on there that will now tell me how many people I have watching at one time. And we got to get that number back up again. So, tell everybody that, hey, we're here. And, Michi, who does more obsessive rambling than Mojo Jojo. For those of you who remember cartoons from the 90s, you'll know what I'm talking about. Age is just a number. This is also the reason why you always see me looking over this way. I mean, if I wanted to, I could bring the Stream Deck here, right in front of me. I haven't been out anywhere outside of Riverton in several days, so if I wipe my face, don't worry about it, okay? I am, as far as I know, I am COVID-free. Haven't had any symptoms. So anywho, on with the numbers here. First of all, renewals. A lot of you of Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, You're all doing pretty good on this one here. We got 94% participation, although we are way past the deadline. We're already into forfeitureville for any LP for the for any of these LPFMs. You still run the risk of a forfeiture. We have 10 LPFMs that still need to file in this window for those states. Now for the previous window. For Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, look at that. We still have, what, six stations. 6 stations that need to file. Come on, you guys. Get off your butt and do this. If you know anybody at these stations, get them to file. Make sure they really, make sure they do want the stations. By the way, if you got comments, that's the place to drop them now. Of course, like I said, we had an issue earlier today, and we couldn't get the broadcast started correctly, and so we had to reschedule. So that's pretty much the that's pretty much the predicament that we're in right now. Let's look at where we're currently working right now, which is in Ohio and Michigan. You guys still have plenty of time. 13% at this time doesn't really worry me too much. You've got 26 days to file, and of course, file a renewal through LMS. Or if you want REC to do it, REC charges $100. We prefer that you use the REC Easy Form system. There's the URL right there, or you can go to the REC website. There's a link there to it. And that way we get all of your information. Make sure you include a signatory name and title. It's got to be a board member. So that way that's on there, because we are getting easy forms that don't have the information, all the information that we need on there. And let's just test something here to make sure that this is still good. There. Okay, yeah. All right. So the chat is working. I wanted to make sure that the chat was still working. And all's well. And apparently the chat is working. So, there. Duh. Okay. MB docket 19193. Well, we all know what happened on that. We got some things we wanted. And we didn't get some things we wanted. So, let's just a reminder for those out there who need to know. These are the basics of the decision. On the first bullet point, I just want to correct that because there was a last-minute change on that, and that was that directional antennas would be required with a proof of performance, but only in situations that are not one of the 3 following issues, including if the applicant is a state or local highway maintenance or public safety administration, if you're using the antenna, the directional antenna solely for second adjacent channel waivers, or if you're using the directional antenna in conjunction with an international agreement such as the Mexico Strip Zone, then you do not need a proof of performance. It's only if you're using them for any other reason, and other than waiving channel 6 or trying to protect channel 6, there really is very few, if any, reasons why an LPFM station, under the current rules, under what was adopted, would need a directional antenna. It's just it just does not. There's no need for it. There really is no need for directional antenna. Some people have said in the past, "Oh well, if you get a directional antenna, it will increase your power in that direction. It'll make you go out further." That may be true for amateur radio, for ham radio, and for other radio services that use a transmitter power output. But broadcast is different. Broadcast works off of an effective radiated power, which means not necessarily 100 watts is not the power that comes out of the transmitter. It's the power that's at the antenna. So if you have, like, for example, a single bay direct circular polarized antenna, that's going to have a 3 dB of loss. So 100 watt ERP, if you're assigned 100 watts ERP from the FCC, you're probably going to look at about 250 or so, 250 to 280 watts TPO from the transmitter power output. Your feed line length and type will depend on some of this too, because you'll have insertion loss. Now, if you ran a directional antenna, let's say you ran something like a very directional antenna, like a Scala CLFM, that may have like 7 dB of gain, then yeah, you've got 100 watts ERP, but maybe you have about 25 watts TPO or so. I'm throwing a number out there. That's not an exact calculation at all, but just saying that you would run a lot less power from the transmitter to get that 100 watts of ERP if you're running a directional antenna like that. So those are the things you got to take into consideration when you're when you're thinking about that. So yeah, again, the 3 issues that they talked about are the 3 issues that really are the meat and potatoes of directional antennas for in the LPFM service. Now, there's only one other application where I would justify a directional antenna, and that's for LPFM stations below 92, from 88.1 to 91.9, that need to use a directional antenna to protect a channel 6 TV station using contour overlap, similar to, using the same rules that also apply to FM translators. And in those cases, you will need proof of performance if you're going to use a directional antenna to protect channel 6 on the waivers that were approved in this rulemaking. Now, of course, the way around this is if you're planning to go below 92, and if you're too close to a TV station or a low power TV station, best thing for you to do is make nice with the station, get in a good relationship with them, and see if they will give you a letter of consent to operate within that area, despite the fact that you are short-spaced. Especially if you're up in the higher part of the reserve band, like up in the 92, up in the 90s, 91s, you may have a better chance getting something with a local station there, because really that channel 6 protection rule goes back to the days of analog TV, analog tuners. Remember, click, 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 click. Remember those days? Remember those days of those manual tuners? The click, click, click days? Yeah. That's those tuners would break. Oh God, that was one of those. Remember the days when you had to call the TV repairman out? Back when TVs had tubes in them. And younger folks may not understand this, but you call a TV repairman. He comes out, and he will brings this big, huge suitcase, this big, giant cube suitcase thing with a whole bunch of TV tubes in it, and then they find the right one, and bloop bloop, and there we go, and then he'd go and spray the inside of the thing and make sure that the tuner is properly turning, and when you click the knob, that the little thing turns. I had when I was growing up, we had a couple of them over time. Was the old big, remember the old big console TVs that they used to have, the old Zenith 25-inch console TVs? Yeah, we went through a couple of them over the years. The neat one that I remember, though, was back in the 80s growing up, family on my mom's side lived in Connecticut. My grandmother was still alive at the time. And she had an old Zenith console TV that was color. And I think it was maybe one of the first color TVs that was mass produced. Because not only was it a color TV, but it had the round tube. It had the frickin' round tube, and it had that more oblong-shaped window for the screen. Those were the days. I miss those days. I mean, that was fun stuff. I kind of miss NTSC television sometimes. Anyway, I'm going off the deep end here, but still. But bottom line is that a lot of those old ancient TVs don't exist anymore. Hence why NPR and others on the radio side are saying, listen, we don't need these stupid restrictive rules anymore. That's why there was this big push to just the FCC said, let's just eliminate the rule completely. Let's just say there's no need to protect a Channel 6 from the FM side, and then, all together. And then, of course, WABC up the road here in Philadelphia, WPVI, just screamed and said, no, stop. You're not going to do that. You are not going to do that. We need some real record of this. There still needs to be studies done. Of course, they're also worried about ATSC3 and all these other things that, TV is wanting to do, but, is not really getting a big customer acceptance, kind of like HD radio. So the FCC said, okay, we're not going to do that then. We're going to stop on that procedure because, we've got another proceeding going on right now which has to do with the Franken FMs. That's going to have some relevance here too. So I think what they're going to do is whatever comes out of this Franken FM proceeding, I think they're going to do is they're going to roll in the Channel 6 stuff in there, because we're talking in the Franken FM proceeding about protecting Channel 6, but only on the lower end of the reserve band spectrum. The Franken FMs want to be able to continue to run analog carriers along with a narrower digital television stream in the Channel 6 spectrum, but still be exempt from almost all the broadcast FM rules and such. But then now they're demanding that they want protection on second adjacents from 88.1s and 88.3s. And, so it's like, where do you stand? And especially considering that they're secondary service, where does this stand? A lot of weird stuff is going on right now in broadcasting. It's a crazy time to be in radio, especially in the regulatory side where I'm at. It's crazy. The FCC, of course, denied the translator relief that we talked about, which was if an LPFM is not short-spaced to any full-service stations, but they are short-spaced to a translator using distance separation, that the LPFM station should be allowed to use contours. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. The other one is the LP250. Let's talk about LP250 first. In the LP250 proceeding, we've been going since 2012 under this impression that the FCC was okay with us making proposals that would penetrate the buffer zone. So the FCC originally pushed for keeping the minimum distance separations for LP250 the same as LP100s, but going into that 20-kilometer buffer zone, basically effectively turning a 20-kilometer buffer zone into a 15-kilometer buffer zone for most full-service stations. That's what the FCC was originally proposing to do. This would have opened the door for a lot of urban LP250 upgrade in areas where, translator short spacing or IFs weren't an issue. They would have been able to upgrade. Now doesn't look, so we went since 2012, so we went 8 years under this impression because the FCC had never said anything different. Now the FCC 8 years later has said, you know something? That's not going to work. You can't penetrate the buffer zone. You've got to have the full 20-kilometer buffer zone. And they put that in the draft report in order. They could have told us that at the NPRM. They put it in the draft report in order. So, we went back to the drawing board, looked at the situation, because they also said that what REC had proposed with the contour backstop that was put in there basically at the request of EMF, in a way, that that was too complex. That just did not meet with the simplicity of the LPFM service. So we went back to the drawing board, and so we did was very simple. We kept the 20-kilometer buffer zone in there, and we did what the FCC wanted. We extended out the minimum distance separations by 5 to 9 kilometers based on service class on co-channel. We also extended out on much shorter on first adjacent. Second adjacent and other things was already calculated to the longer distances anyway because they don't have a buffer zone. And we ran those new numbers through the system. We ran those through our normal LP250 upgrade checks. If you go to check.lp250.com, that's the report that's currently online, and you can check your station for upgrade against the rules that we had proposed during the ex partes in April. And in those, we basically what we had proposed was just basically doing LP250 like 100, so there's going to be no contours, no backstops. The distance separations would get extended, so they would honor the full 20-kilometer buffer zone. And, we would also include the ability to, for existing LPs to upgrade, and during an upgrade period, they would have to protect other LPFM stations, assuming that they can upgrade too. So they would have to protect them as a 250 to 250. And well, by the time the actual adopted report and order came out, the FCC said, "Hey, we saw your plan, Michi, but you're a little too late to the party. But you're always welcome to file another petition for rulemaking." That's basically how they left it. Feel free to dump any comments if you want in there. Any questions? Any questions in regards to LP250? Any questions involving anything? Feel free to derail me. We're going to try to keep this short because we know you guys have been waiting for quite a while, and I do apologize for the earlier delay. Deeply apologize. So anyway, currently right now, what is the state of LP250? Actually, with LP250, we are re-looking at this. Again, we've done some more studies, we've done some more research, we've done a deeper dive into the foothill effect issue, as far as if we extend out another 5 kilometers in distance separation, say to a class C or C1 or whatever, how much of an impact is this going to have on the interference issues? And here's the thing that we found, that in the entire country, we looked at all the foothill effect LPFM stations that are currently out there right now, the ones with a contour, with a service contour of at least 12 kilometers in any direction. So these were originally what we called the foothill stations back in 11749. And so we re-looked at the foothills, and we had determined that of the foothill stations that can still upgrade based on distance separations, that there was only 2 LPFM stations in the entire country that were identified. Actually, there were 3. There were one was in Washington, KIEV LP, and the other was in Hayward, California. And I was trying to get those call letters, but there's an LPFM in Hayward, California, which is basically in the San Francisco Bay Area. And those two stations, if they were to upgrade to 250, there would be overlap between their interfering contour, their 40 dB or 34 dB interfering contour, and the protected contour of a full service station that they otherwise meet through distance separation. Only two, and there was a third case in Montana, and the overlap was slight, and it was completely over rugged, most likely not occupied terrain. So, and that was it. Most of the cases that we saw were foothill effect, where we had foothill effect. The LPFM stations were against the mountain in the direction of where the full service station was. So, you know, the full service station would be, you know, the interfering contour would only be about, what, 18 or 23 kilometers in that direction. And the full service station is maybe 150 kilometers away with a, you know, with maybe like a 20, 30, or 40 kilometer service contour. So yeah, we only found 2 bona fide cases of overlap in the entire country with the LP250 proposal that we have in play, right? And that we put in play at right at the end of the proceeding, and that we will be bringing back. Now, for both proceedings, both Translator Relief and for LP250, we have some decisions that I need, that I need to make here. We'll have some decisions that need to make here regarding whether we should do this as a petition for reconsideration or do this as a petition for rulemaking. Now, petition for reconsideration, think of it this way. A petition for rulemaking is kind of like you got showed out the door, everything was fine, then you come back a little bit later, knock on the door, and wait for them to answer the door, and hopefully they'll answer. Where a petition for reconsideration is more like the Chief Bratton at the LAPD using the battering ram. You know, you're forcing the issue in, and you're expecting a response from the commission either way. Now, in order for a petition for reconsideration to hold any water, there has to be an error that was made by the commission or some late information that came in that would warrant a reconsideration. In the LP250 case, we really don't have that. LP250 was dismissed mainly because the previous plans, according to them, were too complex because of the contours. They claim they want to keep LPFM simple because of all the, quote, inexperienced broadcasters on LPFM. And they wanted to keep, and what we had proposed with the 73815 regime, what we'd proposed with anything with a contour backstop was not a it was not simple. It was too complex. Despite the fact that during the last window, over half of the applications that were filed in the window were filed by hired help, by people like me, Leo Ashcraft, Todd Urich, Paul Boehm, Clay Leander, several of the big DC folks, who all have the ability and aptitude to do contours. You know, the FCC just thought, oh, okay, we just want to make this thing so simple that you don't need a consulting engineer. And so they They rejected that idea. Okay, I accept that. Okay, I do accept that. They wanted to keep the entry into LPFM simple. So LP250, you know, we're right now we're leaning towards a new petition for rulemaking on that one. That means that the FCC can bring it in, assign it an RM number. That's going to open up a new 30-day period. Now, what we're likely to expect was the NAB will come in and say, well, you know, we've had all these chances before, and you know the FCC has rejected it and such. What has changed? You know, what has changed is the FCC's redefinition of the LCRA, the interpretation, saying that the 20 kilometer buffer zone must be respected. That's the huge change. That is the silver bullet to bring LP 250 back in. They changed the rules on us, basically. Indirectly, they changed the rules, because in 2012 the commission insinuated, yeah, you can penetrate the buffer zone. So obviously, different proposals and things like that have come through with taking that into consideration. We originally mentioned that for the C4 when we were doing the C4 proposal. When we were part of that, when we were participating with SSR on the C4, we did the same thing. We said, for Class C4, because of the buffer zone, we'll make the distance separations the same as Class A. The LCRA would allow it, because at the time there was no C4 codified, so there was a loophole. Well, that idea is pretty much we're gonna have to, if C4 resurfaces, we're gonna have to we're gonna have to go back to, okay, we're gonna have to add an extra 5 kilometers onto the distance separations from Class A. So, instead of it being 67 and 72 for LP250, it might have to be 72 and 77. So those are the things we got to deal with. Welcome to the world of being in regulation and following regulation stuff. So for LP250, yeah, we're looking at the petition for rulemaking process right now. Yeah, it is a slower process, but I think it's the cleaner way to go in on this. Again, I have not made any final decisions on this, but we are preparing documentation that could go either way. We are doing, like I said, we are doing new studies. We're going to show that, with the exception of some very remote exceptions, like less than 0.1% of the situations, there'd be no interference. And we would not recommend a contour solution in these cases where there is interference. Back when we had the 100 spacing and we had more urbans going in, yeah, there was an issue because we had more urban foothills going in, and those were the ones that justified the need for the outer contour. If we go back 9 kilometers, that that won't be the case. Now, of course, Translator Relief may change some of that. Now let's talk about Translator Relief, because Translator Relief, the FCC's reasons for that, fortunately they did not say LCRA. If they did, I would be throwing things, because there's nothing in the LCRA that talks about the LPFM to translator relationship from a protection standpoint. Their main issues on this was that it was too complex, kind of like what we talked about LP250 with contours. And in that case, I say, look, this is an optional solution for LPFM stations that need to make a modification because they're getting hammered by a new translator. And especially with the garbage that some of the translator folks are proposing, which we'll talk about here in a bit, it's even more relevant now. So they're claiming that it's too complex, Distance separation's the way to go. Then they kind of gave me the indication, and they gave me the indications on the calls too, that the other reason why they're not liking this translator relief thing is because there's no remediation, because this LPFM stations are not required to remediate to translators in the event of interference. As long as an LPFM meets the minimum distance separation, it meets the 39 kilometers to a translator, regardless of how strong that translator is or what that translator is doing, that translator cannot file a complaint against the LPFM to take it off the air. There's no avenue right now at all to do that. So an LPFM, especially like a foothill, could come in and bring their interfering contour inside of a translator, which a translator cannot do to an LPFM right now under the current rules, and still and be able to fly, because guess what? They meet minimum distance separation. Same with a full service station under LP 100. But what will happen is the wheels will get squeaky and they'll start rattling, kind of like what EMF did in the Razorcake case, which started all this backstop nonsense to begin with for the LP250. EMF also fought an application for KQLH when they tried to make a move to a better foothill site, and it was slightly over 5.6 kilometers. And they fought that because they have a first adjacent translator, which would have still met the minimum distance separation, but they just didn't want the first adjacent interference, I guess. So fortunately, EMF has not didn't complain against KQLH's first booster, and we're kind of crossing our fingers on the second. On the second one, we can truly make a showing that there's no interference on there, so they would have no grounds to file any kind of complaint on that. I think even that booster is nowhere even near their 45 dB complaint zone. They could file a 45 dB complaint if they wanted to, but that's pretty much where we're at there. Fun times. Fun times in the city here. Let's go on to real quickly to so let's just finish up on Translator Relief. Where the FCC did make a mistake, though, was on the fact that they claimed that there was no remediation. I did propose remediation. I proposed that any LPFM station that does Translator Relief, goes in short spaces and uses contours instead of distance, should be required to follow the same exact rules that apply to FM translators for interference remediation, meaning that if an LPFM does contours to a translator, that the translator, and for that fact, really any broadcast station per se, can file an interference complaint using the same exact standard that applies to applies to translator. They can do that. That's what we're proposing. That's what we did propose. The FCC did not catch that. They did not read on to that. And because there was a lack of a remediation proposal in their eyes, they rejected it. That's probably what could get us justified for a petition for reconsideration for Translator Relief. And so that's what we're looking at right now. We are looking at doing reconsideration on the Translator Relief. And that's and then possibly a petition for rulemaking on the LP250. Remember, on both Translator Relief and LP250, all we wanted was a further notice of proposed rulemaking. That's all we wanted. And then we can continue from, and then that would open up a new comment and reply comment period. So that way NAB can say their piece, EMF can say their piece, NPR has not been involved in LPFM proceedings in quite a while, and that's good. They really don't need to be there. If they do, say something nice. Also, too, the LPFMs out there can support this. Also, too, what about the National Translator Association? They need to be involved in this, too. So that's where we're at on that. Public notices. We've got a couple things going on. Public notice, MB docket 17264 is going to be voted on next week, either on or before the commission meeting next Wednesday. That's going to change the way that LPFM stations and other broadcast stations do statutory required public notices, mainly on things like original construction permits, major changes, renewals, community of license changes for full service, and the big one that will probably affect most of the LPFMs will be assignments of licenses. And the FCC is going from doing newspapers to going to an online and on-air situation. Historically, LPFMs have not been doing public notice because it was never codified in the rules for us to do it, even though there's a federal statute that requires it. We've never been doing them. And it took 19 years since the creation of LPFM for the FCC to finally realize that, yeah, we got to do public notice. And that's the reason why the LPFM stations have been doing these pre-roll and post-file renewal announcements. Few things about just a quick thing about the rulemaking, the new rules, is for LPFMs. If your LPFM is on the air, the public notice requirements will be fulfilled by on air. If the station is off the air for being silent, or if it's a applicant for a new entry, new construction permit, the requirement's going to be a website. And originally they wanted to do third-party commercial websites, or like the city government, State Broadcasters Association, a quote community bulletin board website that doesn't exist. They wanted to do it that way. I fought that. And the way I'm reading the rules, LPFM will be, and I'm trying to get clarification on this, and I asked for clarification in the next parte, that LPFM stations will be allowed to use their organization's website, their organization's parents' website, or if they're silent, their station's website in order to make these public notices. So those are the things that we're looking at there. Just to give you a clue here, second of all, on the renewals, for example, under the new rules, you will have, for all public notice announcements, you will be required to carry 6 announcements, at least one per week, for a 4-week period, between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. You can choose the time that it actually airs, but between 7 and 11, Monday through Friday, no weekends. And there's no pre-file for renewals, and none of this weird stuff where you got to schedule messages between a morning drive, afternoon drive, midday. You don't have to do that crap anymore. It's just going to be 6 announcements total. For 4 weeks, no more than 2 in a week. So, and that's pretty much what you've got there. And this is kind of what the new renewal announcement is going to sound like under the new rules. This is basically what you're going to say over the air. Very simple. One of the issues that we're working with the FCC on, and we did in an ex parte letter, was concerns about www.fcc.gov/search-LMS. And this only applies to LPFM stations because LPFM stations do not use the online public file. The issue that I raised there is that you're announcing letters. Letters sound too much alike, and especially the MS in LMS. Am I saying LMS, LMF, LNS, LNF? What am I saying? I suggested that they use the term public search, fcc.gov/public search, or something like that. Something with sounded out words, kind of like what they're doing with public file. Publicfiles.fcc.gov is what they're doing for the full service stations. We need this. We need something similar. Now, of course, LPFMs don't have access to the public file, but so that's why we have to use this separate URL. Also, too, the URL that current search LMS URL is landing on a page where you still have to select what kind of search you want. There's an application search, there's a facility search, there's a pleading search, there's a station search, a facility search, there's a children's television report search, all that stuff. It's like, which one is, which search are we doing? Just send it to the page that has the entry blank for what you expect the listener to search. Just like with public file. Why does LPFM have to be so different? It's beyond me. Another issue that mainly affects commercial stations, but does reap its way into non-commercial very slightly, is that in the commercial world, the FCC is basically stating that instead of doing over-the-air announcements, you do your announcements online. You can make your announcements on your station's website. And when the FCC came up with this in the report and order, they'd come up with some really weird requests. First of all, for the public notice announcements on the website, they have to be placed on the website either at the very top when you first land on the page, or it has to be in a menu, like a top menu, with as a top item that says FCC application. So you may have like, you may have like a home, news, sports, weather, contests, contact us, listen live, FCC applications. And they want that FCC applications link to be up there all the time, even if there's no public notices going on. That's the one thing. Now it even gets even stranger because they want to require mobile apps to also have public notice access. And what they're asking for is on the public notices, they want that public notice to be the first thing, the link to it to be the first thing you see when you bring up an app for a radio station. In the alternate, it can be on a menu, like one of those where you click on the hamburger button and the little menu pops down. The FCC applications has to be an option there. And just like with the other one there, if there's no application activity, there's no public notice activity, the link has to stay there. These are very unreasonable requests. Speaking as a developer, speaking as someone who's been dealing with websites for the past 20 plus years, a lot more than 20 years actually. This is overreach by the commission. NAB saw that. They wrote a letter. They wrote an ex parte letter, and basically explained that these requests are unreasonable, and suggested in the alternate that a FM, that a broadcast station should be allowed to put their public notices either on their website or on their mobile app, or both if they want, but they should not be required to do both. And also, too, that the placement of the message should be down in the footer, like where all the other required disclosures are. The FCC already requires disclosures for public file, for EEO reports. They used to require one for children's television reports. They require one for contest rules. But those rules have no specificity. There's no specific place specified in the rules where these links are placed. So the stations place them in the footer of the website, which is the most unintrusive way to do it, but still be seen. It's like saying, one of the, there were several responses to the NAB's letter, including from REC, which we'll talk about in a second here. And somebody had equated it to, in the current public notice, in the current public notice policy that we have right now, it would be like as if the FCC was to require that the newspaper public notices be placed on page 4 of the sports section. Okay, that's kind of the analogy that was that was used there. Yeah, and I do consider it an overreach. In response to the NAB letter, REC wrote a letter, basically reiterating what the NAB had to say, adding some additional information as the developer of fcc.today and fccdata.org, adding in some additional insight, especially on the mobile apps, and especially on the mom and pop stations. Many of them with little set it and forget it kind of websites. You know, the ones out there that still have maybe the animated GIF of the dancing banana on it. You know, those kinds of websites. And that is, you know, so there's a lot of set it and forget. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of the small station websites, small commercial station websites that still don't have the links to the public notice on there. And, you know, I've ran into a few. I've talked to a few small owners about that, and I told them that they need to get that fixed. That may be an issue that may come back and haunt them someday. So that's what we got there. Stephen White says, apps are not public notices. I agree. An app, to me, a mobile app, is not the same as a website. It is not. It may deliver some of the same information, but it's not the website for the station. You know, the current, like for example, the current J1 website that we run, we're in the process right now of changing our mobile provider. But right now we're still on Nobex Partners for J1, and it is a very cookie cutter vanilla thing. You know, we have, it will link to our social media. It will link to like our, you know, link to like a playlist that it generates and stuff like that of, you know, of the last things that were played, and you could like interact to the station through it and such. But it's not a website. And there's really no way to easily put a link to the public notices on there. It just can't be done. I spoke with the CEO of the mobile app that we were going with, who's probably watching this right now, hopefully. You know, about this whole entire proposal. And, you know, and he was like, this is a bunch of malarkey. You know, didn't use those exact words, but, you know, it's like, this is just something that cannot be changed overnight. And that was the point of the letter. I mean, that was really what the NAB was trying to convey. And REC came in there and supported that right on, you know. Basically, it's one of the rare times that you'll ever see REC and NAB, like, agree 100% on something. It happened here. And, you know, with this, too, came a flood of input from the broadcast industry. Not only did REC respond, but look who else responded. iHeart, Beasley, Cumulus, Entercom, the 4 TV networks, Univision, everybody, including REC, right up there, sending a consistent message to the FCC saying that what they had proposed is just not doable. It is overreach. And hopefully we'll get that changed in time for next week. If not, and, you know, I will communicate with the NAB and say, hey, let me know if you guys are going to do a recon, because if you guys do a recon, we definitely want to be, if it's for those, only for those reasons, we want to be in on it. And, you know, that would be, you know, that would be a good cooperative effort, I think. You know, NAB is still our adversary and will always be the adversary to LPFM as well as to small mom and pop radio. It will always be the adversary. But here's the thing. You can have an adversary, but you can also have diplomacy. It would be like, for example, I mean, like right now, LPFM's relationship with the NAB is kind of like Starfleet and the Borg. You know, there's no real diplomacy. There's no ambassadors. Nobody like that exists. There's no dialogue between the NAB and LPFM really right now. It is a very adversarial relationship with no diplomacy. Or we could be like, I don't know, Starfleet and the Romulans, where there is an ambassador. You know, where there is this chant, you know, they could be going to war and fighting with each other, but there's still that diplomatic channel that's still open. And that's the way it should be between LPFM, whether it's REC, the LPFM Coalition, Prometheus, whoever, and the NAB. That's the way it should be. Yes, Starfleet and the Borg. Yes, I love. You know, ever since the pandemic and the quarantine, you know, CBS All Access did a 30-day free thing, and so we signed up for the 30-day free thing from CBS All Access, and Eva and I watched the episodes, the all 10 episodes of Picard. I hope they do more of that. I really liked that series with Patrick Stewart. But then I started binge watching all of the old Voyager episodes because I missed a lot of them, or don't really remember much about them when they came out first run. I liked Voyager. I love Captain Janeway. I am a huge Captain Janeway fan. You know, Captain Janeway to me is like my number 2 favorite captain. You know, Picard being number 1. I am a Picard. I am more of a Picard person than I am a Kirk person. Okay, so that kind of shows, you know, I like Picard. I like his tenacity, his diplomatic skills, and you know, and Captain Janeway is a nurturer. So anyway, that's where we're at on that. Let's talk about. Speaking of Borg, let's talk about a different kind of assimilation. Oh my God, where am I going with this today? All these Starfleet references. Anyway, let's anyway, back really quickly on the public notice. Just, it was nice to see everybody come together. NAB didn't ask me to come on board with this. I came on board myself. I took the initiative and came on board with that letter. That was not NAB coming to me and saying, hey. But I did contact NAB afterwards and say, we did this. Just know one thing. We'd like to maybe someday improve relationships. But always know that REC's door is always open for you. If you ever want to talk, once this pandemic nonsense is over with, once that's all over with, and we're able to travel again, we're able to go into offices, I'll be more than happy to travel to DC and spend a day and spend some time with the NAB and discuss things. My door is open. This is how REC is different than the others. My door is open. Let's talk about, we're almost done here, by the way. Let's talk about a real mess, and this is the real assimilation that I'm talking about. Just was a couple days ago. Petition for rulemaking was filed by a group of 24 broadcast licensees that call themselves the Broadcasters for Local Program Origination, or I guess that'd be BLIPO. BLIPO? BLPO. BLIPO. Okay, so what BLIPO wants is they are capitalizing on a few recent things that have taken place in radio. Specifically, they're capitalizing first on the Geo Broadcast Solutions geo-targeting proposal That's the one with the boosters to allow the boosters to run a small amount of local insert. Well, the Blippos want to not only allow translators to do local origination, but they want to allow translators to do up to 40 hours a week of local origination on the translator. Okay, so like, all right, you can kind of do that right now with HD2. We still have the silly ability to do HD2 over a translator, so why don't you do it that way? All right, Blippo goes on even further. Blippo is capitalizing on AM revitalization, and they're capitalizing on the recent changes in the FM translator interference remediation rules that we talked about earlier, where it came to the translator relief. Same rules. What they're claiming is that because an FM translate that a station can make a complaint against an FM translator up to the FM station's 45 dB contour, meaning that if a listener is in the 45 dB contour, they meet that prong, one of the several prongs, to file a complaint against a translator causing interference. Well, so they're capitalizing on that 45 dB. They're also going to capitalize on the fact that a AM station is permitted to provide the fill-in service out to the much larger 2 millivolt, to the larger 2 millivolt contour, or 25 miles, whichever is longer. They're capitalizing on that. So what they're now saying is that FM translators should be permitted to be considered fill-ins if their service contour remains, if the service contour of the translator remains within the 45 dB contour of the full service station that its primary is, or 25 miles, whichever's longer in that particular direction. Here's the example that I posted on the website the other day. And this is a total, first of all, this is a total hypothetical example. This is not intended to reflect any real station, although a real station is used for the primary in this case, but we've pretty much doctored up everything else here. But see, right now, you know, a translator that provides fill-in service can only be inside the service contour of the primary station. Primary station is on there in green. That's the green contour on there. Now you're going to see the kind of the light blue contour. That is a 250 watt translator. That is, that's an example of a translator. And maybe the idea here is that they wanted to do the translator for an HD2. That would be the most likely reason for doing this kind of situation, is they'll do a translator for an HD2. So now what these folks want to do is, first of all, let me preface this. If a translator for a commercial station was to operate outside that green contour, the translator may not be owned or financially supported in any way by the primary station that it's carrying. In other words, you cannot use a translator. The owner of the station can't use a translator to extend their service contour, to extend their service area. They can't do that. They can only provide a translator inside their service contour as a fill-in. Originally, fill-in was intended for terrain technical issues, but then it was capitalized on and used for HD to provide an additional programming channel. That's the current rules right now. A translator that's outside that area, a showing would have to be made that that there's no financial tie at all between the translator licensee and the primary station licensee. The common reason for doing that would be is if a county government in a rural area, in an isolated area, decides to, like for example, bring radio stations or TV channels into a local area through translators, the translator is licensed to the government's authority, and it's using the commercial station as its primary station. That is allowed. But if the primary station is paying that distant translator to carry their signal, that is not allowed. There can't be any financial tie. Now keep in mind, this is only for commercial. Non-commercial, totally different. And commonly owned translators for LPFM are under a totally different rule altogether, and that's not exactly in scope here. So what they're proposing is the 45 dB or 20 miles, whichever 25 miles, whichever is longer. And you can see on this map that we've drawn the 45 dB contour of that station. It's in orange. And then we drew a 25-mile radius around that primary station. That's in pink. So as you can see, in some areas, the 45 dB contour is less than 25 miles. So if that happens, then the 25-mile limit prevails. In the areas there where the 45 dB is stronger, goes further out, then the 45 overrides the 25-mile radius. So, if this is allowed, if this type of thing was allowed, and of course this assumes that that all contours and stuff like that could be met, that there aren't any translator interference issues and stuff like that. This would mean a 200, like for example, in this case, this example is a 250-watt translator on the side of a mountain. And it can clearly show that if it's placed in the right place, it can be engineered to cover a huge amount of area and still be commonly owned by that FM station, or still receive financial assistance by that FM station. This is what they want. This is truly what they want. They don't care about the 8 hours a day of local origination. That's a ruse. This is what they want. So what does this mean for LPFM? A lot more interference. This means that translators will be able to freely move. They still have to protect FM translators. They still have to protect their they still have to protect the service contours of FM translators. But what this is going to do is, number one, this is going to open up more roads for possible abuse like we've been seeing in Houston. And this is going to open up more interference cases. This is going to put more of the, we are really getting interference inside the service contour, even though the interfering contour stops at the service contour kind of interference. That's where the 45 dB rule comes in. That's where the UD ratio rules, the minimum number of complaints, the interference complaint packages, all that stuff comes into play. So you know what that means for LPFMs? That means more lawyer bills. We don't need that. Fortunately, as of today, as far as I know, there's been no public notice on this one yet. It may take a few days for the FCC to do a public notice on this. And we're going to keep a watch on this. If this goes to public notice, we'll talk more about it. So as of right now, it does not have an RM number. So we got that. Jose says, this request is approved later on. The translator can be separated from the AM and become an independent station, thus not have to protect the LPFM, and who knows, let them increase the power. There's several reasons why that can't happen. And why it shouldn't happen, I should say. First things first, a translator cannot be a primary service. The Local Community Radio Act forbids that. The other issue that would come up would be around community coverage and Section 307B of the Communications Act regarding the fair and equitable distribution of licenses. The problem is right now, under the current broadcast standards for full-service stations, full-service stations are required to protect other full-service stations both ways, meaning their interfering your interfering contour to their protected contour, which is basically how LPFM and translators protect, but the protection also has to go the other way. The interfering contour of the other station and your service contour. So there has to be this two-way protection. There are some exceptions in the non-commercial world, what we call the Raleigh situation. So there are some exceptions, very few, but overall, protections have to go both ways. We will not, right now, unless Congress changes something, we will not see translators going primary. Also, too, most translators, even if they were to go primary, they wouldn't be able to pass the community coverage requirements. In many cases, the community coverage is a requirement that a 70 dB contour, what's sometimes called the community coverage contour, what's sometimes called the city grade contour, has to encompass a majority of the city of license. So yeah, I don't see that happening. I know this has been a big fear. This has also been something that the AM stations have been pushing for. The more they push that, the more I'm pushing Congress and those to encourage Congress to pass a law, to pass new legislation, to pass a new Community Radio Reform Act that would do a couple things. Number one, it would do at the minimum reallocate Channel 6 TV 82 to 88 and Channel 5 also as either shared with full service television, freezing all full service television there, and letting the excess spectrum be used, but let the spectrum be used in other areas for full service AM stations to migrate to instead of low power TV. Remember, there's only 10 full service stations on Channel 6 right now for TV. The rest of them are LPs. And to me that would be, or do another refarm and move channels. I would like to see, personally, I know there's not enough room to do this in the metro areas. I recognize that. But I would like to see VHF low-band TV just completely go away. That spectrum could be used for so many better things. I would sure the hell love to have an amateur allocation from 54 to 60 megahertz, the old Channel 2. Give me a 6 megahertz bandwidth, and let's do some TVDX on the ham bands. on the old channel 2, all the old analog TVs, hook those up to antennas, and during sunspot cycle peaks, guess what? We're up there running amateur television over long ranges on channel 2. That would be freaking awesome. Okay, I miss doing amateur television. I miss ATV. ATV was a fun aspect of the ham hobby. Doing fast scan was fun. But yeah, that's what I'd like to see. But still, channel 5 and channel 6 really, they need to be allocated. We need an extension of radio. Radios can be on a boat tomorrow because they're already being sold in Japan as wide FM, 76 to 108. We can have the radios here, and you know, we need to start building onto that. Stephen asks, do you think that this proposal for rulemaking will have any legs at all? It sounds way too unreasonable to move forward at all. Yeah, I think it's more. I don't think it has any. I do not think that it has any legs on it. I don't think that the. You know, what they could do is they can get people to back these proposals. And, you know, like the geo broadcast people on the other one for the boosters. They just started going around to all these different broadcasters. I guess maybe selling them on the ID and getting them to agree. And then we saw all these boilerplate comments saying, yeah, so-and-so broadcasting supports this, so-and-so broadcasting supports this. You know, and then, you know, if you go back, and I have not had a chance to do this yet, but if you go back and you look at the facilities that they have licensed to them, are any of them viable for a booster? You read the comments right now in that proceeding. I think right now, I'm the only one in there. REC Networks is the only one in there with opposing comments on this geo-tracking, geo-solution, geo-targeting, whatever the hell it's called. And basically, I did not want to start a booster boom. I did not want to start this trend that full-service stations get boosters, especially when they don't need them. Because what's going to happen is that these full-service stations are not going to understand the booster rules. They're not going to understand that they think that they're going to feel entitled to these boosters. Now, you got to remember one thing about boosters. With the exception of first adjacent channel, boosters are not required to protect anybody by rule. They're not required to protect LPFMs, other full service stations, other translators. They're not required to protect anybody. And if you've got an LPFM or even a translator that is inside, you know, that because of previous application activity is either very close or inside the service contour of a full service station, but not, let me rephrase that, that the interfering contour of the full service station is deep inside of the LPFM or the translator, where if they were to, if the full service station was to put in a booster, that the interfering contour of the booster would saturate the LPFM. The only way around it, the only remediation that we have right now is the rule that applies to translators, because it also applies to boosters. The 45 dB, you know, X number of complaint packages based on the service contour of your station, and putting together the packages, disinterested party, DU ratio, all that stuff. The map that plots where everybody is, and versus the 45 dB contour. You know, yeah, and Steven says exactly the reason why most stations a booster is not viable is because it would interfere with their own station. What's next? What's going to be next? Is are these booster proponents going to demand that the FCC allow broadcast stations to have like a different pattern for their protected area versus their actual area? So like, and then maybe permit them to use like a directional antenna to limit radiation into a certain area so a booster can use that area. I mean, you know, that's kind of the thought. That would be kind of the thought process I would think that some of these booster boomers want to do. You know, we're talking about right now is the geo targeting one, the one that's already in there, that's already got an RM number. Comments were open until May 1st on it. I'm not sure if that's going to go anywhere. However, this one that was just filed, the Blippo petition, is way too outlandish. Again, they're trying to extend the ability. They're trying to extend the service contour of FM stations out to the 45 dB. Keep in mind that one of the people that's backing this, SSR Communications, the same folks that brought us that C4 proposal a couple years ago, that Class C4, they've been doing everything that they can to try to get a couple of stations extended service contours. They proposed C4. They tried to do a waiver request, an interim waiver request for WRTM down there near Jackson, Mississippi or wherever, to try to get that station to go. They wanted to take that station. I'm not sure if they wanted to go to the full 12 or where they wanted to go with that. And then they just did it for another. They tried to do it for another station just recently, trying to bring it up to like 8 kW instead of 6 for Class A, claiming COVID-19. Remember what I said about power increases for COVID-19? I said that they were going to be frowned on. Well, there it is right there. So yeah, they're doing everything that they can, and I think this is just the latest from the playbook. You know, Matt's going to have a lot of explaining to do to me. Matt from SSR Communications. Now, we've talked quite a few times. I've got to call him up someday, and if he's not watching this already, and saying, "What the hell are you thinking of?" I know you're probably not. Just to be fair, I don't think SSR is the kingpin on this. Might be. I don't know yet. But it is a very bad idea. It is a threat to LP. It's actually a threat to other translators, too. It's also not fair to the other commercial broadcasters who don't have translators. Nobody had ever expected that the translator would be used in this way. I mean, under this petition, under this proposal, you can literally turn, like, for example, a Class A station into something bigger. I mean, what is the... Let me just look up something here really quickly here. See, now you got me going here, folks. You got me going. So, like, for example, a Class A station, you know, the service contour on a Class A is 28.3 kilometers out to the, you know, is 28.3 out to the 60 dBu. So now, if we were to add a standard contour out to the 45 dB, 45 dB. Let me get the right numbers in here. 100 height above average terrain, 6 kW. There we go. All right. So if we were to do that, and let me find my Class A here. Here we go. So the 45 dB contour would extend out to 55.65 kilometers. And that's for a Class A. As a point of reference, Where would that put it? Hang on. Let's see. What did I say? Was that distance 55.65? That would turn, just to give you an idea, the reference distance for a Class C2 or a Class B station is 52 kilometers. This is a reference distance beyond a Class B, beyond a C2. So for the purpose, so really, if they wanted to, they could, if they want to be able to have this extended C2 coverage in a certain area. Let's say they want to cover, they want to rim shot a metro area. Think about this, kids. Think about this. You have a station that is in a rural community. It's licensed to a rural community. The 60 dB contour does not reach the urbanized area. So it does not fall under rural radio. It doesn't fall under the additional scrutiny that we deal with when we are dealing with a facility that has at least 50% of its population in an urbanized area, as designated by the Census Bureau. So here's the trick. Let's go back to our little drawing here. Is it going to come up? There it is. Let's just imagine for a moment. Let's just imagine. Forget about the highways and stuff you see on this map here. Let's imagine for the moment that the area where that green circle is a very rural farmland, maybe the other side of a mountain kind of an area or something like that, somewhere way outside the city. And that the target community there where the blue circle is, let's just say that's a small little like Main Street kind of town, maybe, a couple thousand population and such, They'll be lucky to have a bank, a gas station, and such like that. Now let's say that area to the southwest is a major city, or a significant part of a major city. Say like, a top, maybe just, a Census Bureau urbanized area. Using this translator, they would be able to move, they would be able to put they could just put their regular signal into this urbanized area and not be subject to the rural radio. Would not be subject to the rural radio decisions. Meaning that they would not have, in the rural radio decision, the way it works is that if you are moving a station from outside an urbanized area into an urbanized area, then all of the communities within that urbanized area are considered one big giant community of license. So they're to the point of where, when they count the number of stations, so they look at first service, second service, third service, etc. So if there's currently like 15 stations in that urbanized area that are licensed to communities in that urbanized area, and you've got one that's not licensed inside the urbanized area, and you're putting a translator in the urbanized area, you are basically sneaking a 16th station into that region without having to go through the whole process of being evaluated of why does this area need 16 broadcast allotments. Come on, I see through all this. And I'm hoping that the FCC does. I see through this. There's definitely an agenda here. This is, if this gets an RM number, you know, for right now we can stay calm. Ish. But we need to be ready. Because if this gets an RM number, there's going to need to be a call to action here. And yes, I am reaching out. I'm reaching out to anybody who cares at all about our services, who care at all about LPFM, that care about community radio. I reach out even to the non-commercial side, to the full-service non-commercial side, because they have nothing to gain from this other than maybe being able to broadcast locally on translators. But that's not what this damn thing is about. It's about extending out to that 45 dB contour. That's what this is all about. But yeah, this is, when this thing gets an RM number, that is a call to, that's going to trigger a call to action. REC, I would like to see REC on board. I'd like to see Prometheus on board. I'd like to see LPFM Coalition on board. I'd like to see Common Frequency. Dave Solomon even. Come on board. And, you know, because, yeah, this is something we are going to have to stop. This is a threat, in my opinion. And it's just not fair. It's not fair even to other commercial broadcasters that they're able to do this. It's not fair to commercial broadcasters that are in the urbanized area to have competition be able to sneak in this way. This should not be allowed. And I'm hoping that the commission sees this. And again, well, let me just say this. It also depends, too, on who's on the commission at the time that this comes to light. Because I don't think this is an Ajit Pai thing. Although knowing him, he'll come on board with it. If he's sweet-talked into it good enough, he'll come on board with it. He thinks it's good for broadcasters. If he thinks it's good for commercial radio, he'll come on board. If Pai comes on board with this or the geo-targeting, all right, we're going to have issues. But, and again, full disclosure, REC is not political, nor are we making endorsements either way. We're only expressing facts. Okay, disclaimer done. A lot of this, too, is going to drive on who is going to be commissioner in the FCC, or chairman at the FCC, when this all comes to light. If this comes to light between now and January, which, with COVID-19 going on right now, I'm not sure. And the Media Bureau having a lot of work. I mean, come on, we're having issues with LMS. We can't get LMS fixed. LMS being broken is delaying Windows. It delayed Auction 106, in my opinion. It may delay NCE. It may delay LPFM. They're going to blame it on COVID, but in my opinion, it's LMS is the problem. So where do we go? So where do we go with this? And it all depends on who the chairman is. Now, we've already heard word on the street. The word on the street, and this is just rumored, is no matter what comes out of whatever the outcome is of this election in November, Pai is out. Ajit Pai would be leaving the commission. From my understanding, he's got an expiring term anyway, midway into the term anyway. So the talk on the street is that Pai would be leaving. So that would leave a vacancy for the chairmanship. And that would also mean that whoever is in the majority in the White House, and especially if the White House and the Senate, that's going to drive the makeup of the commission. This gives us two possible ways it could go. If the GOP wins, it is very likely that our new chairman, and I'm just making an early prediction, that our new chairman is going to be Michael O'Reilly. I think that he would be the first pick to be chairman. He's got the most experience, and I feel like Chairman Pai is grooming him. He is not LPFM friendly, in my opinion. Dealing with him and his staff, I don't find them to be very LPFM friendly. He has in the past equated LPFM to pirate radio. He made some statements in MB docket 19193. Sorry, in MB docket 19-3 for the adoption of the NPRM, which I was actually in DC for that specific open meeting. Only person there actually representing anything non-commercial radio. No NPR, nobody else from LPFM. I was the only one there. And he did make a statement that kind of used LPFM and pirate radio in the same sentence. I do see him as a pawn of the NAB. So obviously, if O'Reilly becomes chairman, it's going to be, I'm predicting a somewhat bleak future. Again, he could surprise us all. You never know. Now, if the Democrats win, then we're dealing with possibly Jessica Rosenworcel as potential chairperson of the commission. Jessica is very diversity oriented. Not as, I don't see her as diversity oriented as Mingen Clyburn was. But I do see her as a very much a possibility. I still think Jeffrey Starks needs a little more education on LPFM and what we all do. I don't know if he totally gets it or not. And of course, as I've always said, you know, Brendan Carr is sitting in the corner twiddling his thumbs and doing whatever Chairman Pai wants him to do. Okay, that's my current opinion of the makeup of the commission right now. So we'll see what happens. And of course, if the Democrats come in, take the majority, you know, it'll be interesting to see who the third commissioner is going to be. You know, if there, I mean, first of all, I am not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV. But you know, if we had a very Democrat-friendly Senate, House, President, you know, one who can deal with diversity, who can deal with the differences in people, and we have a country that's ready to accept those diversities, especially LGBT diversities. Hell, I'd become a commissioner. I would, if Joe Biden becomes president. Okay, I'm just saying, if Biden becomes president, and he asks me to, you know, to serve on the FCC, and still have to face the grueling confirmation process in the Senate, I'd go for it. No, Ricky, I don't think you are. I don't think you are, unfortunately. You know, for me, it's either that or, you know, going to Ireland and I don't think Ireland has a commission per se like we do here. I think they're just an authority, the BIA. I don't know what they're over. I don't. I'm guessing that their oversight is just the Oireachtas, their legislature. Yeah. So because I carry 2 passports, so you know, I can swing either way. Oh, that can be taken a few ways. Extend the band down to 77 and bring a little Europe to the U.S. and allow even frequency numbers. Hello, 102.2. That's going to be a hard sell. In our environment, it's going to be a hard sell. Because, you know, there's one thing that Europe does that we don't do too much of here. And that is we... In Europe, normally the service contours for stations go out to the 54, where ours goes to the 60, normally. Only in the Class B situations do we have the 54. If you ever go to Europe, go to Japan, yeah, there's stations there, and you go to some places where, yeah, stations are more spread out. However, my most interesting experience traveling overseas was going to Paris. And going to Paris. And I brought along an old boombox analog radio. I think I still have it. It's like torn up and the tape door fell off of it and stuff. But you know, you can literally tune across the dial, and there was like literally stations every 300 kilohertz all the way across the dial in Paris. And this was back in what, 1990. Yeah, I remember that very well. And let's see what we got here. Ricky says the Commission for Communications Regulation, that's otherwise known as ComReg. Yeah, that's the technical side of the communications regulator. The way Ireland is today is kind of like the way the UK used to be, where they had the radio authority, and they had the other one, what the hell was it called? The one, you know, they had separate regulators for the technical end, and also for the licensee end, kind of like what we have in Canada right now with the CRTC and Industry Canada. They're 2 separate agencies. One licenses the broadcasters, the other sets up the technical facilities. Ireland does the same with commercial broadcasters. In Ireland, you have ComReg, which you just mentioned, which is the technical side, and then you have an agency called the BIA, and the BIA is the BAI, the broadcast, yeah, and they're the ones that actually approve the broadcasters, that actually approve the licenses and such, and then then ComReg is the one that actually coordinates the physical facility. And that's why DAB is a disaster in Ireland. Could you imagine if we had European-style DAB here, how much of a disaster that would be? With all the owners? It would be a disaster. You know, and ensemble-style DAB would hardly work here. They would have to do something different. But yeah. But still, there's too many legacy receivers in this country that have that have 200 kilohertz spacing already. It would be, it would be a little bit more of a, obviously, if we were to extend the band down to 76, then yeah, we would have people having to get new radios if they want to get those new frequencies. But if we have stations, existing stations in the 88 to 108, moving to the even number frequencies, to the half channels, I guess we'll call them, that's gonna cause even more impact. Also, it doesn't do good for international relations. That would mean that Canada and Mexico would have to adapt. From a regulatory perspective, I think we're stuck with the 200 kilohertz spacing on FM. We can always go down like Africa does with the 50 kilohertz spacing, like they used to have. It's always weird to see, yeah, they've got an FM station on 98.65, Weird. And if you look at the ITU standards, they've got standards for 50 kilohertz spacing between FM stations. Weird stuff. Finally, we're almost done here. I do want to briefly talk about, may not go brief, may want to talk about a good friend we just lost recently, Donna DiBianco. I think this is our first chance to talk since we lost Donna. Donna had succumbed to her cancer. She's fought this multiple times. She's survived it in the past. Trying to remember, I think it was 2011. 2011, I think it was. I believe that's when the Grassroots Radio Conference was in Urbana, Illinois. At Urbana, at the Independent Media Center there. I believe that's where we first met. And since then, Donna and I had built a really good friendship. Donna had worked a lot with non-commercial stations for many years, helping these stations get started up. She called herself the community radio goddess. She also referred to herself as a station startup specialist. And she would go to these non-coms and basically do training of their staff. And she did the compliance training. She had guides and stuff like that she would do. And this is what she used to do. She used to do this big road show all over the country and go to these stations. These stations would pay her to come out, and she'd spend some time with them. She was very involved in the background organizing of the past grassroots radio conferences. She was in, with Albany and Palinville. I think because of her health, if I remember correctly, I think she had to skip Portland. We were supposed to have a GRC this year in Louisville. I think we can pretty much call that one. I'm not going to put any words into Sharon's mouth on that, because I'm not going to call that one dead. But just based on the situations right now in our country, it's hard to say whether we're going to have a GRC this year. A couple of us have been pushing for a virtual GRC. I got to know Donna very well. when we were in, I think it was Albany. We shared a hotel room, so her and I were roomies for several days, and we got to know each other, as far as, and she was a remarkable person, and her and I have collaborated on a lot of things in the past. We've been both very adamant on some various things, and especially like the direction of the Grassroots Radio Conference, our involvement on the old Grassroots Radio Conference Association, the steering committees, and such like that. Donna was also, I've also entrusted Donna to be a moderator on the LPFM groups that I run on Facebook. Donna was a very reliable and very knowledgeable and authoritative person on non-commercial radio. Past couple years, especially in the past year, her health has been on the decline. And what was it? It was, let me get the date again here. When I think we lost her on the 27th of April. I think it was the 27th. Yeah, it was on the 27th that we lost her due to the complications that she was having. Honestly, I don't know how old she was, but why does it matter? Age is just a number. We all come into this world. We all go out. Science will dictate when that time is. Some folks believe that there's a calling, and your time will come when you get your calling. And I respect that view. But whoever made the call, or whatever made the call, it was Donna's turn. And we lost our spunky one back on the 27th. Donna will always be loved by even me and myself. She was a total sweetheart. And I'm going to be missing her every day. She was somebody who I could throw ideas off of. Some of the stuff that I have done recently, especially where it's come to the compliance side of the house and such, a lot of that was product of me bouncing stuff off of her and getting some of her knowledge and some of her ideas on things. The whole thing where I tell people to think of an underwriting announcement as a business card. You start with a little bit of information and you work out. Start with the name of the business, their contact information, and a brief description, and then work out. That was Donna DiBianco. And we ran with that piece. Donna will always have a little bit of legacy here at REC. She definitely drove some of what we do here. And I'm going to miss her. And I know there's a lot of people in community radio. I see Quentin popping up on here saying that Donna helped out KVNMLP. She's helped many stations. And she's probably touched a lot more people than she realized. She will be missed.